Most of you know who I am. My name is Emma Toops, and I do a business with my husband, Toops Consulting. And actually, part of this year it's been a pivot year. So for you guys who are on our email subscription list, we haven't really been using our email subscription list for over 2 years. So we're kind of back. And part of it is because of the focus that we have had in our business this year to focus on our personal and professional development business segment instead of our consulting segments. I mean, it is Toops Consulting, but that's only because 2 of our segments are consulting segments. But American Warriors and the Purple Connection is part of our kind of pivot and our focus in personal and professional development in the way that we are trying to grow our business. So a lot of you mentioned AUSA. That's how a lot of people know me. I am the immediate past president of the chapter here in Kansas City. I had 2 terms as president, and I was the vice president of programs for effectively over a year because I was dual hatting as VP of programs while I was president until I was able to find Karen McGavee to step up to be the vice president of programs for the chapter. So the Purple Connection is actually an activity that used to be something that we did in collaboration with the club. And I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of the evolvement of the organization of American Warriors. So let me share my screen here and get started. Can everybody see that? Okay, so the American Warriors before today, it's evolved several times between 2014, which is when we started it, to today. It was actually started in September of 2014, and it was a business development team, and the co-founders of it were Lieutenant Colonel Ted Davis, who is a U.S. Army retired. He and I started it. And for 2 years, it was a business development team, met every week. Ted is got a business that is strategic and leadership coaching. So the focus of the business development team was personal professional growth, helping others with their business, being strategic in some of their planning and this sort of thing. We started doing a little bit of support to transitioning military because Ted had been out of the Army for a long time, and I had just gotten out of the Army. And so we had this very unique perspectives in our understanding of business. So that was something that really kind of was interesting in the way that we worked with each other, because he retired from the Army almost the same year that I went into the Army. It was within a year or so. But in 2015 was when the American Warriors evolved for the first time. It became a strategic partnership between the club and the chapter because I was in both organizations. And as the VP of programs, some of the things that I started to do in some of our events was creating kind of a networking element to them. And this was when Mike Szymanski was chapter president. So we were starting to attract some new guests to our breakfast, and we started doing some of the programs as panel programs and kind of engaging with a younger audience who were transitioning military because they could relate to some of our programs. And I was kind of inviting some speakers to our events who were in transition and needing really some help in their networking. So the American Warriors, as kind of where it sort of is now, that was when it started, was when we started working with the chapter as far as the people who would be involved in the activities. In 2016, the kind of the official name of what we were within the ACA Business Club was we were an affiliate club. And what we officially changed the kind of description statement for it was that, where the culture and the community intersects in Greater Kansas City of the military support community and the Greater Kansas City business community, that was kind of who we were. So you had a combination of people who were patriotic business professionals, citizens who wanted to support but didn't have the personal experience of having served or maybe weren't military family. You had the military family. You had the folks who were veterans and retirees. And so that intersection of people, that cross-section of diverse, interested people was kind of who we were comprised of. When we were in this partnership with the club was effectively one of the chapter's community partners, and there were members of the club who were members of the chapter. So it was a reciprocity membership with each other, and that formed the core participants in the activities that we did. Now, the activities weren't necessarily routine other than the monthly breakfast that the chapter was doing, but then we started doing some things that were maybe a lunch and learn or a networking activity, because we started focusing a little bit on supporting transitioning military and young professionals. So our monthly activities then were with the military support community. They may or may not have been organized specifically by Kansas City AUSA. And the Purple Connection was one of these activities that became one of our things that we helped to organize. It was a quarterly event, and it was launched in November of 2016. It was actually a business concept that I brought into the Kaufman Fast Track Entrepreneur course, and because it was something that I felt the community needed something like this. And so it was a concept that I went into that course. I developed a little bit of what the, what the market was for it and whether or not it was something that the community really needed. And we launched it in November, and we're very pleasantly surprised at how well received it was. Our very first event, we had over 75 people attend. We did it every quarter until August of 2018, and that was when we had our last Purple Connection event. Part of the reason why we stopped doing them was, one, the logistics and coordination effort was pretty high, and also the other leader of the chapter who was working with me in organizing them, he was going through a life transition because he was retiring. So our vice president of young professionals and I were the lead organizers of the Purple Connection. But when he, went through his own transition because he retired, we just didn't have the manpower to continue to do it. So in 2019, it changed again as far as what the American Warriors activity was. We became a routine meeting at the club. So it was third Wednesday of every month. We met at the club, and it was a facilitated discussion. So this is an example of what some of our topics were that we talked about. So Wanda Booth was a recent retiree, went into business, and she and I were then the co-chairs for American Warriors. In 2020, we evolved the discussion to be a Great Decisions discussion group, but it didn't end up working out. I launched the Great Decisions discussion group with KCAUSA in January, first Mondays, and so that went well. And I was figuring, well, you know what, we can do this again later on in the month with the American Warriors, different audience, different contributions in the discussion. And so the first meeting that we did for this was in February. And so that was attended by several members of the American Warriors. I think Sharon was there. But then COVID happened, and that was the only one that we had. Because the next one was supposed to be March 19th, and by then everything was kind of shut down, stay in your houses. And so we didn't have another one. I did create a virtual event for it, which is what we did with our KCA USA Great Decisions group, but it was too new. Nobody knew anything about it. There was nobody there. And so the American Warriors has been on hiatus since April. So what is American Warriors going to be now? In September, all of the club members received an announcement, it was club-wide, that all of the affiliate clubs were going to relaunch, and they were now going to be called special interest groups. There was going to be some formal structure that was going to be required for all of them, because prior to this, it was whoever was in charge of the group just kind of had their own decisions for how to run it and their activities or what now. So the club has now grown to where there are other metros that have club locations. There's even what we refer to as the virtual club, because some of our business connections are now overseas. So we have some virtual club members like in Italy and in South America and in places to where there's not a club facility yet, but they have access to the club resource directory. So that's something that they have as a benefit for being a club member. So some of the things that are going to be in place as a special interest group is that each group now has an executive director. So for American Warriors, that is me. So as of October, American Warriors is a special interest group. I am the executive director. So the mission statement on the information site on the club, there's a public-facing page for the interest groups, and there's 20 of them for the club. American Warriors is one of 20. This is the mission statement that is on the information sheet or information page. So we provide educational and networking opportunities for veterans who are leaders in business, and we support the transition of active duty service members into private and public sector business. So for my story, I have only been in business for about 6 years with Thurs Consulting. Prior to that, I was doing insurance for about a year. So in total, since I got out of the Army, 7 years of business experience. And I'm in an executive MBA program right now. And that, so far, other than the Kaufman Fast Track, has been my only formal business education. Being a member of the club, where so many of the members have been in business for decades, have been serial entrepreneurs, a lot of my business education in the last 5-6 years has been through the relationships of the club. So folks who are coming out of the military, and Dave had talked a little bit about just kind of getting started on his own, same sort of thing. We want to help veterans in their businesses, if that's what their next thing is after coming out of the military, as well as supporting those who are just looking for their next opportunity, whether it's in the private or public sector. Okay. The activity, the routine activity, and this is something that is now required for all of the special interest groups, is a routine virtual event that is available to any of the club locations or club members to participate in, because it's a virtual event. That's going to be the Purple Connection. So it'll offer routine professional development opportunities. There'll be an opportunity to educate people and to provide assistance one-on-one, because we're meeting people. I'm referring to it as educational networking, which is kind of what the programs were for Kansas City AUSA, what they have been now probably for the last 6 or 7 years. They've been educational networking, and a lot of the activities of the club are exactly that. It's educational networking. To become a member of the American Warriors Special Interest Group, it's open to any of the club members wherever they happen to be. They can be, currently serving in the military, they are veterans, or they're just patriotic, supportive citizens who have a service or support or care for this particular community. So for someone who's already a club member, it's just a a designation in their member profile that they are an American warrior. So as far as the Purple Connection, this is a concept document. It's actually what I had as my final project or presentation when I was in the Kaufman fast track course, because your graduation presentation is kind of like a pitch to a coach panel. So I talked about this a little bit in that course, and it's the concept briefing or kind of information that I sometimes would go over at a Purple Connection event for people who were brand new. So basically it's focused on transitioning military, and the challenge is that when they go home to wherever home is for them after the military, they may or may not feel like they have purpose for what is next. Their entire life is in transition. It's not just the career, and reintegration requires a lot of them adapting what they already know or understand because the environment is different. So there's a lot of transitional challenges that people will have. This is actually a very researched problem. And so these are some excerpts from a document that was published in April of 2015. It talks about how it's not necessarily the lack of support, it's the lack of connectedness of the support. So the leading gap in the services is collaboration, coordination, and collective purpose. The quotes at the bottom of the slide were actually from the document, and these are things that veterans actually said in a survey, because when they were doing the research, they surveyed probably over the course of 3-4 years or so. The IVMF of Syracuse University, they did the study over like 3 or 4 years and surveyed thousands of veterans and family members, and these are some of the quotes that were given. So in Kansas City, networking in Kansas City is very niche-y, and it probably is in any metro. Kansas City geographically is over 7,800 square miles. There's over 2 million people here. So it has to be niched because of just the size of it and all the people who are represented in this geography. So these are some examples of, for people who are even in the military support community, how niche-y it can be. We've got the AUSA, which is the Association of the U.S. Army. We also have the Navy League, right? Military associations. You've got ones that are specific to the industry. You got human resource managers, but then you've got a society for military engineers. Okay, so you got different chambers all over, and you've got, even within the military support community, different folks who have different interests. Red, white, and blue is like a running club, and the Patriot Guard are bikers. So just depending on what it is that you're trying to connect to, networking is just inherently niche-y. So how more difficult is it if you're someone who's not familiar with the environment, you're just coming home and you've been gone for 4 or 5 years, or 10 or 20, or something like this, and you just don't know where any other support or resources is. So this is a little bit of a cartoon, but it is, I call it the bubble page, because in my first year of networking, building an insurance agency, because I was doing nonprofit work as far as just some of the things that I was interested in, all of these bubbles were places that I actually went to because of an event. And all of those events were in kind of a different thing. Some of those things was education or career or health or just something that was fun and social. So this is just a representation of, if you're trying to get connected to a whole bunch of resources and you're in transition, unless you have a whole lot of time and energy to do a whole bunch of networking, it ends up being very, very difficult and frustrating because of the nature of networking. So how do you solve it? The Purple Connection. Too often there would be an event that would happen. It'd be someplace in some part of the metro, and it'd be focused in one thing. And well, if you needed support in some other thing, you had to wait for the next event that would occur before you could actually go find the expert on it. So the attempt in the Purple Connection was, let's have a routine event, people know when it's going to be, and just have the different spheres of influence there, or at least, you know, accessible to those folks. So it's a partnership by who have a common goal. The audience is the military support community, the transitioning service person, the young professional who is still maybe in the reserve component, or their AGR, or regular Army and they're stationed here as a recruiter, or at Leavenworth, or at one of the government agency, you know, because there's a lot of government agency offices here in Kansas City. So that was the attempt as far as the Purple Connection. So I've been asked a little bit about the name, and some of you might recognize where this is coming from, depending on what level of the military that you served in. So in the military, for those who are at the tactical level, this may not be familiar as a term, but the color for joint is purple. So at the strategic level of organization, when we're overseas on operations or deployments where we are working with our sister services, we've got foreign military allies, foreign military or government, you know, government and contractors, and, you know, the native folks of whoever's country we're in, that environment is referred to as a joint environment. And sometimes it's referred to as a purple environment. So there's kind of some vernacular, military vernacular that is associated with the name. And everybody who's on an operation, when we are deployed, everybody's there for a common purpose. So that's kind of the idea when it comes to what is this all about. We're trying to get everybody who have a common audience that they're trying to serve or support to be in the same space. It also has kind of a tactical reason for the name. When we were doing this as an in-person event, we actually had name tags that were red or blue. And so if you more closely identified with the military support network, or you more closely identified with the military environment, you would choose one of the other. And well, someone like me, I could wear either one that I wanted to, but it made it a little bit easier for folks who were maybe not as comfortable approaching someone who was a cold connection to say hello. Where red and blue come together, it creates the color purple. So for someone who's shy, they don't know what business language to use, they're more comfortable talking to someone who is military, they're looking for blue tags. Somebody who is a business professional, they're looking for military talent, they're looking for blue tags too, but it's because they're comfortable approaching them. It's the audience they're wanting to talk to. So this is part of the name as well. It's a tactical reason for the color purple. In the virtual format, it may or may not be as relevant, but the joint environment concept remains true. So this is the overall vision for the Purple Connection. You don't take action on anything before you're aware of it. So you have to create awareness first that enables you to then access the resource or seek out more information. You're then empowered to take action by the support of other people. This is a quote, I'm not even sure where I found it, but sometimes this is how veterans feel. You know my name, you don't know my story. You've heard what I may have done, but you don't know what I've been through. So it's just having a little bit of understanding or empathy that the challenges are real. Some of them can be very difficult. And the support of community that we have, sometimes they don't know how to help, and we can help them be more helpful. So this is the mission of the Purple Connection: expedite that reintegration, help with personal professional growth, and if there's healing that's also needed, and that's part of the service or support that they require. Doing it by regularly bringing together the subject matter expertise and facilitate that efficient connection. So some of the values, everybody is associated to the military usually is expected to have a high level of integrity. That is still true. Respect others where they are, because not everybody's going to be at the same place. And then encourage and enable others, empower people to take action, help them with their courage if they don't have courage to address their fears. You do that through education, community support, and community cooperation. And the participants in this environment, they're going to be all sorts of people, you know, public or private, businesses or nonprofit, schools, colleges, associations, and whatnot. So this was the format of the Purple Connection then. When we were doing it, it was a collaborative effort, multiple organizations involved in making it happen. It was quarterly in person at the Grid in Overland Park. It was an evening event, several hours long, because the first part of it was an information fair, just open networking, people socializing, going around the fair and talking to people. Then we had a panel program that everybody was in the bleachers and sat down, and each person on the panel had 5 minutes to talk about their organization. It, you know, was kind of like an elevator pitch. It was very intensive as far as what it required to coordinate. It required 2 sponsors to pay for the venue and the food, 2 to 5 people to manage all the pre-event coordination stuff, the marketing communications, and actually to be there the day of the event with the registration table, helping vendors set up with their tables and whatnot. It was well attended, every single one that we did, but because of location and the time frame being in the evening, we very often did not have a lot of participants who were coming from the Northland or Leavenworth, unless they already were out and had a lot more ability in their flexibility in their schedule to network in Kansas City. So what the program format is going to be now, it is going to be a monthly 1-hour virtual educational networking program. So I have the kind of the agenda as far as how that hour gets broken out. It'll be 5 minutes of welcome, introduction a little bit to what is this. It'll be a 3-person panel. It'll be 8 minutes per person, and the 3 people on the panel, one is going to be a veteran entrepreneur, one is going to be a military support nonprofit or a community organization, and one is going to be a representative for a military-friendly corporate company. The 15-minute Q&A is going to be after each organization it has their 8 minutes, because sometimes the Q&A covers topics that is common to one or more of the panel. After that, there'll be a transition tip of some sort, a life, school, or career. So some type of insight, some perspective, maybe a resource or tool, something like this. And then event announcements for 5 minutes, and then we'll wrap it up and be done for that event. All of that should take an hour. Because it is virtual, it'll be a lot easier for people to attend wherever they are, because there's only 3 people on the panel, as well as the transition tip is a lot easier to be able to coordinate and prepare for a monthly event. So the intended outcomes in doing this routinely every month is we can't help everyone, but everybody can help someone. It's just being aware of who has assets and resources available and who it is that they're trying to help. And if people understand that about you or your organization, referrals can be made. So here is how do you get involved. American Warriors is a special interest group of the club. So being an American Warrior is becoming a club member. However, being the executive director and Thurs Consulting is one of the companies in the club, I'm also a community partner in AUSA. If you are part of my email subscription list, you will gain the information on when the event happens. and you'll have opportunities to be made aware of who the panel members are. You won't have access to the directory. You won't have, direct access as far as being a club member to all the resources of the club. But if what you're interested in is the Purple Connection and the information that I would put out in my newsletter, in my emails, you can become a subscriber to my Tubes Consulting email list. That can be part of how you can be involved. If you are a club member, you select American Warriors in your member profile. And so part of what, your involvement entails is you talk to other club members about what is American Warriors, what do we do, what are we all about, invite them to the events. And then, just like any other event that we have at the club, you invite people who you think are going to be a good fit for the culture of the club, or you invite people who are going to be interested in American Warriors. And then there are leadership opportunities. Talk to me about whether or not you want to be part of the executive team. And because American Warriors is going to be a resource available to all of the club locations, there'll be eventually there'll be opportunities for clubs to have club committees where they have the American Warriors of a particular club location are doing local activities at their club facility. So here's right now what we have for the schedule. I've already talked to the chapter president of KCA USA to be a panel member, and Sumner One is a very military-friendly company, very quite involved in the military support community, and then Tubes Consulting being the veteran entrepreneur. So this will be our first kind of run at this. And I was hoping that there would be some members from the Columbia Club on the webinar today, but I know that they probably have enough of a core group of folks who would be able to coordinate for, panel participants. And so I'm going to reach out to their general manager, a couple of their veterans that I know are actively building their business in the club, about being the ones to coordinate the panelists for the December event. So as we kind of figure this out a little bit as far as how best to execute, the general format is what I have described. And as each American Warriors club location grows in their core number of participants, they can decide to do things locally at their clubs. And we will probably do the same in the Overland Park location. We have event space. We've got folks that we can probably get involved in what it is that we're doing. And the military support community here in Greater Kansas City is very large and very active. So that is all I have for my presentation. Are there any questions?